You can't stop my ex from coming to this house, James. I'm not your slave. Those were the exact words my wife Vivian hurled across our living room. Her tone was sharp, her pride unshaken. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about marriage, pride, and the price of disrespect. Right there in our own living room, with another man smirking in the corner, Vivian said, the one thing no husband ever wants to hear, and me. I didn't shout. I didn't raise a hand. I just stared at her, heart pounding, mind empty, pride shattered. Let me ask you something. Be honest. If your spouse looked you in the eye and said those words to your face, what would you do? Would you argue? Or would you walk away and let silence speak for you? The story began on a warm Tuesday evening in Seattle. The rain had stopped, the streets were calm, and I was finally heading home early for the first time in weeks. I wanted to surprise Vivian, maybe take her out for dinner. She had been distant lately, spending long hours on the phone, smiling at messages she wouldn't explain. But I was a trusting husband, so I brushed it off as stress. I parked my car, carried a small box of her favorite chocolate-covered almonds, and stepped into the apartment, with quiet excitement. But what I saw when I opened the door stopped me cold. Vivian sat on the couch, dressed casually, her hair tied up in a messy bun the way she looked when she was truly comfortable. Sitting beside her was a man I immediately recognized, Adrian, her ex-boyfriend. They were laughing, sharing an inside joke that didn't belong in a married home. For a moment, I froze. My hand still held the gift box, trembling slightly. Vivian, what's he doing here? My voice was calm, but cold. Adrian leaned back confidently. Relax, man. We were just catching up. Vivian crossed her arms, eyes sharp. Yes, it's fine. Adrian is my friend. You can't stop him from coming here. I'm not your slave, James. The words echoed louder than any scream. I stood still, unable to believe what I was hearing. I looked around the room, the same room I had furnished with my savings. The same couch I had bought for her comfort and felt like a stranger in my own home. I didn't respond immediately. There was no need. Some battles aren't fought with words. They're settled in silence. Adrian smirked, adjusted his jacket, and said, "Guess I should head out." He patted me on the shoulder as he passed. I didn't move. Vivian sighed dramatically. Don't start acting like a victim. He's just a friend. That night, I barely spoke. I ate nothing. I just stared at the ceiling beside the woman who had shattered my respect for her in one sentence. And though she didn't know it, my silence that night wasn't weakness. It was the sound of a man deciding to disappear. That night, silence filled our bedroom like a ghost neither of them could face. Vivian slept easily, her breathing steady, unaware that I lay awake beside her, eyes open, staring into the darkness. My chest rose and fell, but my thoughts were heavy, too heavy for sleep. I replayed every word in my head. You can't stop my ex from coming here. I'm not your slave. Those words weren't just defiance. They were disrespect dressed as independence. For 2 years, I had believed I married a woman who valued peace. I thought her confidence made her strong, not proud. But now, I could see it clearly. She didn't see partnership. She saw control. By dawn, I had made up my mind. I got out of bed quietly, moving like someone escaping a memory. I showered, got dressed for work, and stood in front of the mirror. My eyes looked different, tired but focused. Downstairs, I made coffee as usual, poured a cup for Vivian, and left it steaming beside her favorite mug. The gesture wasn't for love. It was for closure. Then I picked up my phone, dialed my office line, and said the words that would change everything. I'm tendering my resignation today. The HR manager was shocked. James, are you sure? You've been one of our most reliable team leads. What's going on? I exhaled. It's time for a change. By 9 a.m., it was official. I no longer had a job tying me to the city, or to Vivian. Around noon, Vivian left for grocery shopping. She didn't notice the calm in my tone, or the strange relief in my eyes. When she said she'd be back soon, the moment her car left the driveway, I stood in the center of the living room, surveying the place I once called home. Every object told a story. The framed wedding photo on the wall, the blue couch we had chosen together, the little indoor plant she promised to water, but never did. I felt something break loose in my chest. It wasn't anger, it was freedom. I moved fast. Within an hour, my suitcase was packed, passport, clothes, a few essentials, nothing more. I left the rest, including my wedding ring on the nightstand beside her untouched coffee. Before leaving, I took one last look around. The silence was almost peaceful now, as though the house itself understood. I turned the key, locked the door, and placed it under the welcome mat. Then I walked to my car and drove off. No destination in mind. Just away. As the city faded behind me, my mind was calm for the first time in years. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I didn't explain. And when Vivian returned home that evening, humming a song and carrying grocery bags, she froze at the doorway. The living room was half empty. My clothes were gone. My watch, my laptop, even my toothbrush gone. Only silence greeted her. That was the day she realized what it truly felt like to lose a man who had already given everything. Vivian stood frozen in the doorway, her groceries slipping from her hands. The sound of a tomato can rolling across the floor echoed in the hollow silence of the house. For a moment, she thought maybe I had gone out for a drive. But as her eyes scanned the room, panic started crawling up her spine. My laptop bag was gone. My shoes were missing. The framed photo of our wedding that used to sit on the TV James, she called out, her voice trembling. James. No response. She ran upstairs, her heart pounding like a drum. The closet door hung open. Half of the hangers were empty. My drawer, the one where I kept my wristwatch and cufflinks, was bare. And there, sitting on the nightstand beside her untouched coffee mug, lay my wedding ring. She stood there for a long time, staring at the ring, her breathing uneven. A cold wave of realization hit her. I had left. Completely. She snatched her phone and dialed my number. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Her hands shook as she texted me. James, where are you? Can we talk? No reply. An hour passed, then 2. She called my office, only to be told that I had resigned earlier that morning. Her knees weakened. He what? She stammered. The receptionist confirmed it. Yes, ma'am. He said he needed a change. Left all necessary paperwork signed and complete. Vivian hung up without a word. The phone slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. The world around her suddenly felt too quiet. Over the next few days, she searched everywhere. She called my close friends, my parents, even old colleagues. No one knew where I was. My social media accounts had been deleted. My email was unreachable. It was as though I had erased myself from her world. At night, she couldn't sleep. The bed felt too wide, the room too empty. She would lie there remembering the small things. How I used to wait for her to eat dinner together. How I never raised my voice, no matter how angry she got. How I always smiled when she called my name. Now, all she had were echoes. Her pride wouldn't let her cry at first. She told herself I would come back, that I was just being dramatic. But by the end of the first week, reality shattered that illusion. Bills began to pile up. The rent reminder came in. The internet subscription expired. I had handled all of it quietly, consistently. For the first time in her adult life, Vivian realized she had no idea how to sustain herself. Still, she didn't call her parents. She couldn't bear to tell them that the husband they once admired had walked away without saying goodbye. One evening, as she scrolled through her phone aimlessly, she stumbled on an old photo of her and me, taken 2 years ago in front of the Seattle waterfront. We were both smiling then, radiant and in love. She stared at the image for a long while, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. That was the first night. Vivian cried herself to sleep. But it wouldn't be the last. The following weeks turned into a quiet storm. Vivian's once vibrant life began to dim piece by piece. The apartment that used to smell like my cologne and fresh coffee now reeked of emptiness. My absence had a sound loud and sharp, echoing through every corner of the house. At first, she tried to pretend everything was fine. She posted old pictures on social media, smiling with captions like, "Self-love is the best love." But behind every photo was a woman unraveling. The rent notice came first. I had always handled it quietly, never once complaining. When the landlord called and she realized the payment was overdue, embarrassment hit her like a wave. "I'll sort it out by next week," she lied, her voice unsteady. Then came the utilities, the power company, the internet provider, the water bill. Every notification reminded her that I had been the invisible glue holding everything together. Without me, the structure of her comfort collapsed. She tried to reach out again, called, texted, even emailed, but everything bounced back. My number remained blocked. My email deactivated. My social pages gone. It was as though I had vanished into thin air. One night, she broke down and called my best friend, Aaron. "Please, Aaron. I just need to know if he's okay," she pleaded, her voice hoarse from crying. Aaron sighed heavily on the other end. "Vivian, he's fine. But he doesn't want to be found. You should probably let him heal." "Let him heal," she whispered bitterly. "He left me like I was nothing." "No," Aaron said softly. "He left because he was tired of being nothing to you." The words stung more than she expected. She hung up without replying, tears blurring her vision. The next morning, she sat on the couch alone, broke and drained. Her pride, once her loudest armor, had turned into a heavy burden. She remembered that day how she'd looked at me with arrogance in her eyes, and told me I couldn't stop her ex from visiting. Adrian, the name alone brought a bitter taste to her mouth now. He had texted her a few times after I left. Casual, flirty messages that now felt hollow. Still, desperation has a strange way of clouding dignity. She called him. "Vivian?" His voice carried mild surprise. "Hey," she said, trying to sound composed. "Can we talk? I've been going through a lot." There was a pause on the line before he answered. "Sure, come by." By evening, she was at Adrian's condo. A sleek downtown space filled with glass and chrome. He greeted her with a faint smile, but there was no warmth in it. They talked for a while, mostly small talk, until she finally said, "I need a place to stay. Just for a little while. Things haven't been great." Adrian leaned back, folded his arms, and gave a half laugh. "Vivian, I can't do that. I'm not ready for that kind of commitment. We had our time, but that's in the past." Her face dropped. "You said you cared about me." He shrugged. "I did. But you made your choices. I'm sorry." She stood there in silence, shame crawling up her throat. As she turned to leave, he added quietly, "You should probably reach out to your family. They'll understand." That night, Vivian sat in her car outside his building, staring at the steering wheel, realizing the painful truth. No one wanted her anymore. By the next morning, Vivian had no strength left to pretend. Her world had crumbled faster than she could gather the pieces. The rent was 3 weeks overdue. The fridge was almost empty, and her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. After a night of crying in her car, outside Adrian's apartment, she finally made the decision she had been avoiding. She would go home to her parents. The drive there was long, quiet, and heavy. Each mile felt like a confession she couldn't escape. Her father's house stood just outside Portland, a modest one-story home with a wide porch and a swing she used to sit on as a child. She parked the car and sat for a moment, her heart pounding. Her mother opened the door before she even knocked. "Vivian," she said, shocked. "What's wrong? You look terrible." Vivian tried to force a smile, but her voice broke. "Can I stay here for a while?" Her mother didn't ask questions. She just hugged her. The kind of hug only a mother gives when she knows her child has fallen apart. Later that night, her father came home from work. He was a quiet, man-measured, thoughtful, the kind who didn't speak until he had something meaningful to say. He sat across from Vivian at the dinner table, his gaze steady. "Where's James?" he asked finally. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "He left," she whispered. Her father's jaw tightened. "Why?" She hesitated. Because I disrespected him. He caught me with Adrian, my ex. But it wasn't what it looked like. We were just talking, and I told James he couldn't stop him from visiting. I said I wasn't his slave." The silence that followed was heavier than any words. Her father leaned back slowly, disappointment clouding his face. "Vivian," he said quietly, "a man doesn't leave because of one argument. He leaves when he's been dying in silence for too long." Her mother reached over and placed a hand on her daughter's. "You hurt him deeply, sweetheart." Vivian nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I know," she whispered. "I thought he'd always forgive me. I thought he'd never leave." Her father sighed. "Love isn't built on arrogance. It's built on respect. You can't claim freedom while destroying trust." Those words stayed with her long after everyone went to bed. She lay awake in her childhood room, staring at the ceiling, replaying her father's voice in her head. The next few weeks were quiet. She found a part-time job at a local diner, cleaning tables and serving coffee. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to contribute to the household. Each day, as she watched couples walk in holding hands, A hollow ache filled her chest. One evening, while wiping down a table, she overheard two women talking about their husbands. How grateful they were for the little things they did. Vivian smiled faintly, but her eyes watered. For the first time in her life, she realized that losing me wasn't punishment, it was consequence. She had mistaken comfort for control, and when her arrogance stripped away the respect that held our marriage together, love quietly packed its bags and left. Her days became a rhythm of work, chores, and regret. Her social circle had dwindled. The women who once celebrated her now kept a polite distance. She never remarried. She never moved on. Every night, she lay in that small guest room and replayed that moment. The look on my face when she said those words. The quiet devastation in my eyes. Sometimes she would pull out her phone and scroll through old photos. Wedding pictures. Vacation snapshots. Moments when we were happy. And every time, the tears would come. Meanwhile, months moved like slow trains, and I rode them to a new life. I left the city with a single suitcase, and no intention of looking back. In a new town, I found an apartment. Above a small bookstore, and a job at a tech startup. That prized quiet competence. My days were disciplined work. Run along the river, small meals, late night reading. And in that rhythm, I discovered the first clean breaths of peace. I did not post about my change. I didn't call or send messages that begged for understanding. Instead, I rebuilt my world from the inside out. Small routines. Modest goals. New friends, who knew me only as James. Without the weight of a marriage that had curdled into contempt. The promotion came faster than I expected. The salary was better. The nights felt safer, less like a minefield of unspoken resentments. I learned to laugh softly again. I let myself be surprised by small kindnesses, a colleague's invitation to dinner. An old neighbor's suggestion to join a weekend hiking group. I never spoke poorly of Vivian. I kept the better memories like fragile glass. They were not trophies. They were lessons. One evening, while switching off my reading lamp, I felt no triumph, only a clear-eyed certainty that I had chosen survival over spectacle. That quiet decision was the victory I'd wanted all along. One weekend during a community tech workshop, I met a graphic designer with a warm laugh and a quiet strength that mirrored my own. We struck up a conversation about design systems and coding frameworks. It was easy, natural, no pressure, no games. Over the following weeks, we'd run into each other at coffee shops, bookstores, community events. Each time, the conversation flowed a little easier. She never pried into my past. She respected my boundaries, and I respected her independence. Slowly, we built something real. Something that didn't need to be loud to matter. One evening, as we sat by the river watching the sunset, Ella asked softly, "Do you ever think about the past?" I smiled faintly, looking at the water. "Sometimes, but only to remind myself how far I've come." She nodded, understanding without needing details. That night, as the river reflected the twilight sky, I finally felt free. Not from Vivian, but from the version of myself that once believed love could survive without respect. The days folded into weeks, and the weeks bled into months. The world kept moving, but for Vivian, time felt stuck in one long gray moment. Each morning, she woke in her parents' small guest room, surrounded by silence that used to belong to me. My absence had become a ghost wand that followed her from dawn to dusk. She had tried everything at first. She called my old number until it was disconnected. She emailed my company, only to get an automated response. "James Carter no longer works here." She even searched my friends' social media, hoping to see a clue, a tag, a mention, a shadow of my face. But there was nothing. It was as though the earth had swallowed me whole. Every night she replayed that last conversation, the defiant tone in her voice, the disbelief in my eyes. "You can't stop my ex from visiting me, James. I'm not your slave." Those words returned like a haunting echo that refused to fade. Now she understood what they had cost her. Her parents, though kind, couldn't hide their disappointment. Her father's silence said more than his words ever could. He had warned her long ago that arrogance destroys affection faster than time ever could. Her mother, meanwhile, tried to help her pick up the pieces, getting her that job at the diner, urging her to rebuild from scratch. Vivian worked hard, but the emptiness never left. Every man who came into the diner reminded her of me in some way, the quiet ones, especially. The way they folded their sleeves, the way they paid attention when spoken to, but none of them were me. One slow afternoon, she overheard two customers talking about a new tech consultant who had made waves at a firm in another state. Some quiet genius named Carter, one of them said. Her breath caught for a moment. Could it be me? But she quickly brushed it off. The name was common, and she knew better than to hope. Hope, she had learned, was a cruel thing when guilt was your only company. At night, she wrote apology letters she never sent. Sometimes, she whispered my name in the dark, half expecting me to walk through the door and say I forgave her, but the door stayed closed. I, wherever I was, had vanished completely from her world. No trace, no forwarding address, no clue of my new life. Just silence. Deliberate, final, and powerful. And in that silence, Vivian met the version of herself she had always hidden, from the one who craved attention more than affection, who mistook control for love. Regret had become her punishment, but also her teacher. For the first time in her life, she understood what my quietness had truly meant. It wasn't weakness. It was strength. The kind that walks away and never looks back. Far away from the town I once called home, I had found something most people spend their whole lives chasing peace. I lived in a quiet apartment, overlooking a stretch of river that caught the evening sun like liquid gold. Every morning I jogged before work, my mind light, my heart unburdened. I no longer carried the weight of explanations or apologies. I had simply let go. After months of silence, I'd secured that job at a growing tech firm. My skill, calmness, and work ethic caught attention quickly. Within a year, I had moved up the ranks not because I fought for it, but because I simply did my job with integrity. My new colleagues respected me. Some admired me. None knew the story behind my eyes, the quiet pain that had shaped me into who I was. I had deleted all social media. No trace of my past life existed online. My old contacts were gone. My number changed. It wasn't out of bitterness. It was self-preservation. I didn't want to be found. One weekend during a company retreat, I sat by a campfire as my team laughed and shared stories about their lives. When it was my turn, someone asked if I'd ever been married. I smiled faintly, looking into the flames. I was, I said, quietly, but sometimes walking away is the only way to save yourself. The conversation moved on, but those who sat closest noticed the depth behind my words. It wasn't sadness. It was acceptance. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Vivian's days had grown small. Her world now revolved around work, chores, and long nights of her parents were aging. Her friends had scattered. The once vibrant, confident woman had become withdrawn. She spoke little, laughed less, and carried a quiet regret that never seemed to fade. Sometimes while wiping down tables at the diner, she'd glance out the window and imagine me walking by. She imagined me happy, fulfilled, and free. That vision tore her apart not because I was gone, but because I had found peace without her. Her pride had cost her everything. Her home, her marriage, her dignity. And in losing all of that, she realized she had never truly understood love. Love wasn't control. It wasn't ego. It was respect. Something she had failed to give the man who gave her everything. One late night after closing the diner, she sat alone on a bench outside. The city lights flickered like distant stars. The wind was cold, brushing against her face, carrying with it the faint scent of rain. She closed her eyes and whispered into the night, "I'm sorry, James. Wherever you are, I'm sorry." But there was no answer. Only the hum of traffic and the sound of her own heartbeat echoing against her chest. I had vanished from her world completely, and in my silence, I had said everything she needed to hear. Years passed, the seasons turned, and life carried on. But not for everyone, in the same direction. For some, time healed. For others, it only deepened the scars. I had become the lead systems engineer at one of the fastest tech firms in the country. My quiet determination and honesty earned me the trust of everyone I worked with. I bought a modest house near the river, where evenings were filled with calm music and the hum of distant city lights. I volunteered at a local youth program, teaching teenagers about coding and perseverance. They loved my gentle humor and my ability to listen without judgment. I never told them about my past, but everything I taught came from the lessons pain had carved into me. Ella and I had built something beautiful. We didn't rush into anything. We just existed side by side, supporting each other, respecting each other. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset by the river, She rested her head on my shoulder and said, "I'm glad you found me." I smiled. "I'm glad I found myself first." Back in the small town I'd left behind, Vivian had grown older too, but not wiser soon enough. The diner had become her second home. Her hair carried streaks of gray now. Her once flawless nails were chipped from years of hard work. Her mother had passed on. Her father spent most of his time in silence. Rumors reached her occasionally, whispers, that I had done well for myself, that I lived somewhere near a river, that I was happy. She never tried to confirm them. What would she say if she did find me? That she finally understood. That she finally regretted it. It was too late. One quiet evening, after closing the diner, she walked home under the soft glow of streetlights. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a brief moment, she imagined me walking beside her the way I used to when love was still alive. But it was only the wind. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "I hope you found peace." And somewhere far away, under that same vast sky, I was looking at the same stars. Not in bitterness, but in calm acceptance. I didn't know she still thought of me. I didn't need to. My silence had already spoken all the truth that words never could. In the end, my absence became her mirror. And her regret became my freedom. I never looked back. And I've never been happier. My wife disrespected me by having her ex over and saying, "I'm not your slave," when I objected. I quit my job, packed my things, while she was out. Left my wedding ring behind, and disappeared completely. She lost everything trying to find me. I started over, found peace, met someone new, and built a better life. Sometimes walking away is the only answer.